next part in our chat app series. I know in the last part I said we're going to look at sending photos, but it got kind of long, so I figured I might as well roll it into the next part. So we are going to actually look at sending photos now and nothing else in this video. So let's start by opening up our workspace and let's talk about photos. So as I mentioned in the last part, we need to handle two things. The first thing is handling a way for the user to input a photo, and the second part is quote unquote sending. So let's do that first part first. So we want to go to our chat view controller, and essentially we want a input bar button item here, and we can have an image for it, and I think I'll add a plus. And when the user taps it, we're going to allow them to either take a photo or choose a photo. So let's set that whole bit up in view_did_load. So where is view_did_load in here? Let's just Command F for it. There it is. So actually what I'll do is I'll be more modular and create a function and call it setup input button. And from here we can call down here setup input button. And to create an input button, I believe it's called an input bar button, but I'm gonna kind of be winging it. So if we break it, we'll break it together. So we want a input bar button like so. And we're gonna add some properties to the button, but basically we can say message input bar, and we wanna set the left stack view width constant to be 36. And animated we can keep as false. And then we want to set on the message input bar, we want to do set left items. So let's see, we want to, set, what options do we have? Stack view width, we got the stack view, middle content view, set stack view items. This is what we want, and we want to pass in an array with the button, and the state we want to pass it in for is left, and animated again we can put false here. So let's actually configure this button a little bit. So we're going to say button, and we want to set its size, image, and what happens when we tap it. So the size that we're going to set is going to be a CG size, and it's going to have a width of 35, 35, and animated false. And we did 35 here because we made a constant width of 36, so we'll have a 1-point buffer. We are also going to say button and set image, and the image is going to be a UI image, and it'll be a system image, and I think it's called add. And if it's not, we'll find what it's called in a second. And we're going to say it's for the state of normal. And what else do we want? We want a button on touch up inside listener. And this will basically give us a closure of what happens when we tap on the button. So here it passes in the item itself. We don't really care about that. But we're going to create another function out here, and it'll be a private func, and we're going to call it present, let's call it present input action sheet. And here we can say self present input action sheet, and we don't want to cause a memory leak, so we're going to do weak self, and we can do self optional, do Command B to make sure this is building, should be building. And then let's make sure we're on the right simulator here. So we want to be on this one. Actually, I think we want to be on this one. So hit Command R, and we should see now a little input plus accessory is what it's called on the left of our input field if the simulator decides to stop being slow. So if we click on this, what you'll notice now is we have this space here, but we don't see the plus. So there is a program called SF Symbols that I mentioned earlier in this course that includes all of the symbols built into the iOS 13 SF Symbols library. So you can search for add in here, and you'll see all the icons available what we want is this one, which is actually called plus rather than add. So let's change this to plus. And again, if you don't recall, you can download that SF Symbols application from developer.apple.com. Totally free. It's just a nice little reference. So now we tap it. All right, cool. So now we're in business. We've got this plus button here, and we can even make it a camera. But the reason I made it a plus button is because later on, we're going to want to also allow the user to share their location and videos. And if you want to extend it to allow sharing of documents, the camera isn't really cognizant of all of that. And actually, maybe let's change it one more time. Let's change it to be an attachment. I think paperclip is in here, right? We don't want this. What we want to use is this one, so a paperclip icon. That's actually probably better for an attachment instead of a plus. So let's use paperclip. So before we run it, what we want to do in here now is show an action sheet. So we're going to say let action sheet is a UI alert controller. And this is going to have a title and a message and a style. Style will be an action sheet. Title will be attach media. And we're going to say for the message, what would you like to attach? And let's get rid of that E. In here, we are going to instead of just show take photo or choose photo, because this action sheet can also include other things like videos and such later on, we're going to add options like that. So we're going to say action sheet, add action, UI alert, action with a title, style, and a handler. The first one we'll add is photo. Style will be default. Handler will be week, self, and underscore in. And let's copy and paste this. And let's do it twice. And the second one we'll have here is video. Third one we'll do here is audio. And we actually need it one more time for a cancel button. This one will be cancel, and make sure you change the style for the cancel button to be cancel. And finally, we can present this action sheet. So we're going to say present, present action sheet animated true. We want another function down here, and we're going to say it is present photo input action sheet. And as the name implies, we're going to present another action sheet in here and call it from this function. Make sure you do self question mark since it's optional because we did weak self. Let's actually get rid of these for now because we're not using them at the moment. So we're just going to get all these warnings on the right here. Since we're not using it, we can put them back in once we're ready to use them. And I'm going to be lazy and copy this whole action sheet code here and throw it into here. And the difference is going to be the values. So we still want this cancel button, and we only want 2 actions in here. And actually the cancel button itself, we don't really even need a handler for it. So we can just pass a nil and go ahead and pass a nil up here as well. And for this one, what we want to say is the title is attach photo, and where would you like to attach a photo from? And action sheet, first one is going to be camera, next one is going to be photo library, and let's take care of using both of these actions. So similar to how we allow the user to pick a avatar in the registration form, if you recall, we're going to leverage the UI image picker controller, and we're going to say picker.source type in this case is the camera. The picker's delegate will be self, and that'll give us an error because we have not conformed yet. We're going to say picker allows editing and make that true, which will force the user, to crop out a square. And we want to make sure we have weak self here because now we are going to present this picker by saying self question mark present picker animated true. Copy this whole bit of code, put it on in here in this next action, and the only thing that's going to change is the source type to be photo library. Let's go implement the delegate so these errors go away. So we can come down here and we'll add an extension here on the chat controller. So we're going to say extension on chat view controller, and it'll be a UI image picker delegate and a UI navigation controller delegate. UI navigation controller delegate. And the functions that you want, I believe one of them is required. So you'll have an error over here if you just hit Command B. And they should have an error. Looks like we have an error elsewhere. So we have an error up here. And why is this complaining? Self present picker animated true. It's because we didn't put weak self here, which we should. Like so. And hit Command B again. Things should be compiling. Cool. So we want to bring in, I guess they're optional functions. We want to bring in two functions for this image picker. The first one is image picker did cancel, and this one's pretty easy. We just want to call dismiss on the picker with a nil completion handler, and the other one we want is image picker did finish picking image with the info dictionary here, and we want to get the image out of it that they've picked. So we're going to say in info, it is for the key of UI image picker controller .info key .edited image, and we want to make sure it is a UI image. Else we can return, and of course we still want to dismiss this picker. And now the workflow becomes we want to upload image, and then once it's uploaded, we want to send message. So we actually have objects that do both of these tasks already. To do the upload of the image, we need to first get data for this image, since we upload the data to Firebase Storage, not the image directly. And to get the data, we're going to do it in this guardlet because it's optional. We're going to say image data is image.png data. Fix that indentation with the Control I. Now we want to upload it, so we're going to say storage manager, which is the object we added, shared, and we only have two functions on here. We have download URL for and upload profile picture. So we want to go to storage manager and add a function to upload a picture for a message that we're sending. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. So we could probably get away with copying the majority of this function. So let me just literally copy and paste it, and we'll just adjust it. So copy and paste that. Let's change this comment here, the documentation string, to be upload image that will be sent in a conversation message, and we'll call this upload message photo. And it's going to take data, a file name, a completion handler, which is this type alias. So if we come up here, we see this type alias returns a result of string and a error, which I think is sufficient, but what I don't like is the name of the type alias is pretty coupled to what this function is doing. So let's call this upload. I guess we can call it, let's leave it this actually, because it's upload picture completion and not upload profile picture. So that's fine. Now in this function, what we want to do is put the data into a new folder in our bucket, and we'll call it message images. And we're going to pass in the file name. We're going to put that data. If we failed, aka we have an error, we'll return failure with our failure. Otherwise, we're going to try to get that image's URL that we just uploaded. And the reason we want to get the URL is this is going to be the content of our message in the messages collection in the real-time database. So that's actually all we need to do in here. So if you hit Command B, nothing in here should be an error, but if we come back here, we have to finish implementing this function. So this is going to complain. So you want to call that new method, which is upload message photo with data, image data. The file name, you can just put a string, and we'll talk about this in a moment. And the completion, will be a result in, and we can switch on the results. And in the case of success, we're going to have a URL string. In the case of failure, we're going to have a error. So we're going to print that message photo upload error. And let's put that error in here, like so. And now we're ready to send message. So uploading the image is basically just part one. It doesn't actually send a message. So important thing to understand. So let's talk about this file name. So the file name just needs to be some unique string with a suffix of PNG because we got PNG data out of it. So you can generate this any which way you want. What I would recommend is, because we have a function in here called create message ID, and if we go into this function called create message ID, it basically takes our other user email underscore our email underscore date string, and it uses that. So we can use this as a part of the name to make sure it is truly unique and that nobody overwrites your image when another user tries to send an image, since all file names must be unique. So we can say here, let's file name is this plus, rather, let's actually prefix it, photo message underscore this, and that should be good to go. So photo message underscore that, and the file name will be this. Now notice it's a file name and not the path. And why is this complaining? Shouldn't be complaining. Go ahead and hit Command B. Looks like something's not right. So this is complaining because this should return a string if I am not mistaken. Use of optional. Okay, it returns an optional string because I think in here we do a guard for the user email, as I suspected. So let's go ahead and unwrap this in the guard statement up here. And we can say message ID is this, fix that indentation, and use this here. Hit Command B and things should be compiling now. Still not compiling, and the reason is because we need to put a break here for now because we're going to implement it, and each case needs to be handled. Ignore that warning. The thing that's important to understand is this is the file name and not the path in our storage bucket. So if we command click into this in the function, you'll notice that we explicitly say put it in a folder called message underscore images. And again, we read the download URL from message underscore images. So once we have done that, we actually want to send the message, which translates to update the database. So we can, again, use our database manager to do that. So I am going to print uploaded message photo, and we're going to put the URL string here. And now we want to actually send it. So we're going to say database manager and shared, and we want to send a message, and the 4 I believe is the conversation ID. Let me click into it and confirm. We should have used better parameter names because the 4 isn't very helpful, but that's what I thought. So it's the conversation ID. So we need to unwrap that as well since it's optional on this chat controller. So up here, I am going to say let conversation ID is conversation ID. Fix that indentation. And we can pass this guy in right here. The next parameter type here is the other user email, which is simply other user email, which is a property on this class. And notice it's going to give you a warning here because we're in the closure. So we need to say self dot, but we don't want to cause a memory leak. So we are going to say weak self here and then unwrap the weak self to a strong reference. So strong self equals self. Otherwise, you can return. And here we can say, instead of just this, we can say strong self dot that. The next parameter is the name, and this is the title of this controller, which is the other user's name that we're chatting with. And the title on the controller is optional, so we're going to unwrap that as well, because there should always be a title. So we're going to say let name equals self.title, fix that indentation. And I think the next parameter is the actual message we want to send. And then we have a completion, which has a Boolean in it. So we can say success in for here. And the message is a message type. So we're going to say message. And this part is a little interesting. So I'm actually going to copy from where we send our other message, which should be somewhere in here in send button clicked. Where's that function? There it is. So this is our message. So let's go ahead and copy this bit. Let me copy this and go back to this other function and paste that in up here. And we want to adjust this, of course, because this is a text-based message that we're sending. But rather, what we want to send is a photo, and photo takes a media item. So let's talk about this media item in a second. We'll just leave it like that. Date is fine, message ID is fine, and self-sender. I believe we need to unwrap this off of the current class because it too is optional. So we can say let self-sender equals self.self-sender. Let's get rid of that self actually. And this error should go away because we now have self-sender. And now let's talk about this media item thing that it wants. So let's do that. In this closure, we can now just say if success, and we can print sent photo message. Otherwise, we screwed up something, and we can say fail to send photo message. So this media item is actually a protocol that MessageKit, the framework we're using, gives us to basically define a media item, which could be a photo, video, audio. And it's very similar, if we come to the top of this class, to the protocols that we have extended on these structs up here. So what I'm going to do is add another struct and call it media, and it's going to conform to the media item protocol. You'll see an error pops up here, and we can click it and hit fix, and it will stub out all of the pieces that it needs. And the things that we care about in this case, when we upload an image, we're going to pass in the URL because we're not passing in the image directly. And the placeholder image is non-optional, but we could just pass in some dummy placeholder image. And the size we're going to use for rendering purposes, but it too is non-optional. So we're just going to pass in some random size. So let's go back to that function that we were editing all the way down here. So for media item, we are going to now pass in media, which is our struct. And let me actually create this outside of that parameter just to keep things a little cleaner. And like I said, it has basically these 4 properties. And for the URL, we are going to create a URL from the string, which is the download position, download URL for in Firebase where that uploaded image exists. The image will be nil for now. The size, we can just say .0, which we don't really care about the size for uploading the image because this is for rendering purposes. And here we're going to pass in a placeholder. Just because it's non-optional, it's kind of irrelevant what this is, to be completely honest. So we're going to say guard let URL is a URL object with a string constant and pass in the URL string. And then we also want to say, let me put it on a new line, the placeholder is a UI image and system image, and we can just literally pass in plus. This is totally irrelevant. This parameter is just non-optional, so we need to pass in something. So we need to unwrap it like so. So now we have this media item here, we pass it in, and we pass it into our send message here. And let's see, why is this complaining? This is complaining use of undeclared identifier message. And where is the message? Message is this thing. And I think we have message right above here. And it's because I still can't spell after 13 parts of these videos. So this should be building now. If you hit Command B. But before we can actually run and test it, if you recall when we set up sending messages, we hard-coded some stuff in here to basically send a text-based message. So we need to come in here and just read through the code and adjust it to send a photo-based message. And it shouldn't be too much code change. So to send a message, we first get our email, which is fine. We get the safe email, and then we fetch the conversations messages. And let's see, we get the current messages, looking good. And for message, what we now care about is if it is a photo-based message, we should get a media item in here. And what we want to do for our media item is for this message up here, we want to assign the URL. So we're going to say message equals media item dot URL dot absolute string. And that's what we want to assign it to, which will basically allow us to reference the photo's upload position when we want to render. So this is complaining because this might return optional. So it's saying we should do it as a string because it returns string optional. So what I'll actually do is put this whole thing in an if let. So we'll say if let target URL string is this, then we can assign it to the message like so. And our warning should go away from the right side over here, which in fact it does. Now this part is good to go. Let's keep reading on. My email is good. This part is good too. So we have the sender email. We have is read, date, content, type is going to be kind.message kind string. And we actually created this as an extension if we command click into it. And for the photo, we just return the string of photo. Moving on, what else do? We say strong stuff, database, get the messages again, update the messages here, which is looking good. And strong self, then we get the current user's conversation node. We do our little hacky for loop to try to update the latest message. And what we're doing here is we're simply updating it to be message, which is a URL. So on the conversation list, we might have to adjust the way it renders, but this part's looking good to me. Then we continue on and then update it for the other user, the latest message, and we finally say we are good to go. So go ahead and hit Command B and things should be compiling and we should be able to send a photo now, but the rendering will need some updates. So let's start by making sure the sending bit works before we write any more code. So let's hit Command R to build and run. And looks like I'm signed in over here in the simulator. So I'm going to open up this conversation and I'm going to start by hitting plus. And then we get our nice looking action sheet here with our options, and we want to go with photo. We get another action sheet, and again, if you recall, we can't use the camera because we're in the simulator, so we're going to hit photo library. And sometimes it's a little slow, but it should present our photo library. And we're going to send these nice looking flowers. So we're going to hit this, and before I send them, let me open this up and do a Command K so we can take a look at our print statements. So we are going to hit this, and if you take a look here, quite a few things happened. So the first thing is we see a message actually got rendered here, and the message is the URL for our image, but we actually want to show the image. So we're going to adjust the rendering like I mentioned. But again, if you look over here to what actually happened, ignoring these warnings in the top, we should have successfully uploaded the URL. So here's a download URL that we uploaded the image to. Uploaded message photo, which is looking good to me. Success in getting messages. It basically updated because we added the new message. And that's looking good. So if we come to our Firebase console, under here, if we reload it, we should have a new folder. And this new folder should have that image in it, and the file name should be our message ID as a suffix, and this should be photo message, which it is. Whole thing is a PNG, so it's suffixed. It looks like it's not suffixed by PNG, so actually that is an issue. So let's see if we can get away with just using this URL. So let me copy this, and it looks like Firebase actually already escaped the spaces in our string. So let me go ahead and get this URL, and let's see what we get back. So we do get the image back. It's kind of large, so we'll probably have to compress it later on. But I don't like the fact that we're missing the suffix. So let's go ahead and adjust that by going back to our chat view controller and look for where we are creating that file name, which is photo message underscore the message ID. So I'm going to say for this message ID, we are going to say replacing occurrences of a space with a dash. And at the end of this, we are going to also append .png. So that should be good to go for future images that we upload. And I don't exactly know if we're going to have issues with the current naming that we gave it, but let's just try to update our rendering to support this message, and we'll find out what happens. So the rendering for the image is pretty straightforward as well. Once we call the listener function in here that we added, which just attaches the listener, and it's should be somewhere here. Let's find it. Here's all of our present. Here's our listen for messages. Once we get our messages, we assign it here. And if we go to this function, I believe we're assuming all the messages are text-based because we haven't supported anything else. So if you take a look here, we do in fact assume they're text-based. But what we in fact want to do is use the type here to figure out what the kind we should assign here is. So because we only have two types, what I can say is if type equals text, then we can return this guy. Otherwise, we want to return a photo, and it looks like it's going to be difficult, so I might have to do it a different way. So let me actually get rid of the if in here. I'll do it the cleaner way, I guess. So instead of passing in this here, we want to figure it out up here. So we're going to say if type, which is a string, is a photo, it's a photo. Otherwise, you can assume it is text-based. And what we want to assign it to is a kind, which is going to be a media. Rather, it's going to be a message type, and it'll be optional. And down here, we can say guard let final kind equals message. Rather, what did I call it? Kind? Yeah, kind. And if it doesn't, we can return nil. And then here, instead of passing this guy in, we can pass in our unwrapped element. And in this case, we want to say kind is text-based. And this should actually, I think, be message. Let's see, we don't want a message. What is the parameter type of kind? Let's click into it and find out. I think it was called message kind. Yep. It's a message kind protocol, actually. So make the type of kind message kind optional. And here we can say it is text-based if it decides to auto-complete itself. There we go. It's message lowercase. Go ahead and hit Command B, make sure it's compiling. And it looks like we have an error already. And the reason it's complaining up here is because message kind is a part of the MessageKit framework. So we need to come all the way up here. Wow, this file has gotten big. And let's import MessageKit here. And now it should be, if I can spell message kind, it should be able to resolve this keyword now, and it should be green. Hit Command B, and we still have an error here, and the reason we have an error here is we're saying kind, and we want to pass in the content. That's what we called it. Now in this case, our kind is going to be photo, and it wants a media item, and we're just going to call it media here, and we're going to say media is the media struct we made. And again, we don't want to actually pass in the image here because we don't have the image. We only have a URL to that image. So we're going to say guard let image URL is a URL with a constant string passing in content. And this content is what we're pulling from the database because that's what we inserted. And here we can pass in image URL. Image is going to be nil. And here we can say placeholder. And again, that's just non-optional, so we got to unwrap it. So this is going to be a UI image, and we'll use a system image of plus. And a placeholder, of course, is actually a good thing for rendering purposes because we don't want the user to just stare at an empty rectangle that's loading in their image. And finally, the size, we can say, because this is rendering purposes, we can make this a constant. So what I like to do is say size. For now, let's just do 300 by 300, but what you really should do is use the width of the device. So we'll come back and adjust this later on. So there's our media, and we've got our final kind. Hit Command B to build, and we'll still need to download that image, but let's see what it looks like if we hit Command R and click into this. We should still see all these other messages normally, but now we see a massive plus button because that's our placeholder. So to actually download the image, it's fairly simple. We need to go to the chat view controller, and we want to add another delegate function for all the message delegate stuff. So let's see where we've conformed. So we've conformed to all of that good stuff in here. So in this extension, there is a function you want to implement called configure configure media message image view. And this function gets called, as you can see with the parameters, passing in the image view, the message itself, the index path, and the collection view for the message. So here we can actually download and update this image view. So what's cool is because we have SD web image in this project, it'll actually be pretty easy. So come up here and import SD web image and come to the very bottom again. And what you can do is you can say guard let image URL is off of this message bit. So you can say message dot URL. Let's see, we want message dot kind. So actually what we want to do is as follows. So we first want to get the message out. So we want to say guard let message equals message as our message struct. Else we're just going to return. Then what we can say is switch on the message dot kind. And in the case of photo, we have that media element, and we're going to pull the URL out. Otherwise, we can simply break. We don't really care. And now we can say guard let image URL is media dot, and there should be a URL on here, like that. And we're going to return if it's nil. And we can now say on the image view SD set image with URL, pass in that image URL, and let's spell this correctly, that would help. Pass in that, completion is nil, and we should be in business. So go ahead and hit Command B and see if you have any issues. I don't think we should have any errors, hopefully. Go ahead and hit Command R, and let's see what this looks like. So we're going to tap into this conversation, and it's loading the image, and boom, we've got our photo message. So looking pretty slick. So go and run the app in the other simulator for the other user we're chatting with, and let's see what this looks like on their sent side. So it should look exactly the same, but it should of course be on the left side. And what's cool, and what I want you to notice is when we tapped into this, notice the image is already there. And that's the power of SD Web Image that I was mentioning. It does the caching for you, so it doesn't need to download the image over and over again. So if we load in the sending side, we have our image here from the sender side. So I don't know about you guys, but this is starting to look pretty cool. To me at least. So the next thing we want to do is allow the user to tap on this photo to go to our photo viewer controller to see it much bigger. And that's pretty easy to do as well. I believe there's a delegate function in here in one of these message delegate bits, and I think it is called did select. We want collection view did select item at index path, and there might be one for the messages. So did select message. Is that a thing? Configure media message? I guess not. So we can say did select message at index path. Whoops. And no, that's not what we want. Did select. So we want collection view did select item at index path. Then we can pull out the message by saying let message is the message in our collection of messages at the section. If you recall in the very beginning, we returned the message based on the section because MessageKit uses one section per message. And then we can copy this switch statement for the message because we only want to handle it for the photo case for now. Once we implement videos, which will be very similar, we'll add that case handling as well. So now that we have the URL, we can invoke our new view controller, which we created, but it's totally empty right now. And it's photo view controller. And we want to say self.navigation controller. Man, I can't spell self. Self.navigation controller.push view controller. We want to push this VC animated true. And let's go quickly implement this photo view controller, and it should be a very small amount of code. So I believe it's totally empty right now, so you can simply click into the photo view controller, which is this one. And it's an empty file. Let's get rid of this template code. And we're actually going to add our own initializer. So we're going to say init with URL. Because we want to pass in a URL to show the image from. We are going to import SD Web Image so we can download it. Another option is you can pass in the bytes because technically we already downloaded it on the other screen, so it's kind of redundant. But for now, I think it's okay. We want to call super inits in here. And the super inits, we're going to use the one with the nib name and bundle, passing in nil for both. We're going to say self.url is the URL, and let's create that URL property here, like that. Let's move the view to load down, and what we want to do is create an image view on here, so it'll be a private let image view, UI image view, UI image view, and this will be an image view like follows. And we're going to say image view.content mode, which specifies how the photo will scale. .content mode is going to be, let's see, why is this not auto-completing and giving me a hard time? Let's put parens here, and let's say this needs to be scale aspect fit. Let's return that image view. Here we want to add it as a subview, image view. We're going to say image view sd set image with a URL. Oh, and this is supposed to be the property. So let's do self.imageView, and it looks like I spelt it wrong, so let me fix that. Image view, sd set image with a URL, self.url, completion is nil. Override view did layout subviews, and we want to of course give this image view a frame, and we're going to say it's the entirety of the screen. And we're also going to give the view a background color here of black so the photo stands out. And let's see, what else do we want to do? Let's also give this a title of photo, and we'll give it a navigation item dot large title display mode as never. And I think this should be good to go. If we hit Command B, or actually before we hit it, you see there's an error here because it wants us to bring in that required override function for the decoder. Now that this is set up, we can go back to our chat view controller. And here we can actually initialize this photo viewer controller with the given URL. So let's open up that paren and we can pass in the image URL. And I think we should be good to go. So I know I did that part fairly quickly, but let's see what I broke along the way. So clearly we broke this. So this is a image URL. We don't want the coder one, we want with the URL. So hit Command B. Things should be building now. And let's see if we can tap into one of those photo messages. So if I hit this, and then I click on this, it looks like we can't actually get into the message. So that's not good. So let's see what we've got going on. So let me put a breakpoint here. And let's see if we even get into this function when I tap it. So clearly we do not. So let's see why we don't. And I think the reason we don't is we never set the direct collection view delegate. And let's see, where's that view did load function that I can never find? Here it is. So we're going to say on here the delegate, which is a UI collection view delegate, is self. Hit Command R to build and run. Let's see what we get. I'm not sure if we can actually override that appropriately, but either way, we'll find out in a second. So let's click on the photo, and again, we are not able to actually go and tap into it. We don't actually even call this function. Where did that function go? Is this one, I believe. So let's do that again. I don't have the breakpoint there. And let's tap into this function. We definitely are not coming into this function. So let's do a Command Z to get rid of this line, and let's figure out which one of the protocols has a function that we can use to tap on a message. So this class has also gotten pretty big. So this extension conforms to three protocols. First one is a data source, then we've got the layout delegate, and then display delegate. I have a hunch that the display delegate, per the name, should have a function where we can tap into a message. So we have a message style, don't care about that, background color, message header view, footer view, configure avatar view, accessory view, text color, enabled detectors, detector attributes. Man, we've got everything in here but what we need. Animation, annotation, blah, 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 conversation audio. And that one, I think there should be, here's a, okay, so we've got an extension on it. And we've got message style. So they've got some default implementations here. So let's do a Command F to see if we can find the particular function that allows us to select the message. So there's configure message, configure media cell for the given message. So let's I guess let me go jump into the docs so we don't continuously search in here, and I'll be back in 2 seconds. Take a quick peek at the message kit documentation, and actually there's another delegate which actually gives us all the functions when a user interacts with the message. And surprise, it's called message delegate, or message cell delegate, I think. So let's assign the, not the input bar, we don't care about this one, let's leave that as is. Let's create a new line here and assign the message cell delegate. And if we actually click into this, rather let's conform first at the bottom. So maybe this is a good opportunity to move this code to a different function and extension. So let's delete this bit. And let's put an extension down here on our chat view controller. And we want the message cell delegate. And there's a function in here, I believe it's called didTabMessage, but if we click into this, just so y'all can see what we've got in here to work with, there is a didTabBackground, didTabMessage. So it basically passes in the cell itself and actually gives you some nice documentation here, because what we're gonna want to do is basically get the index path for a given cell, and it tells you you can pass in, call this function indexPathForCell method, and that will let you get the position. So we're gonna implement this function. So we're gonna say didTabMessage, and let's paste in that code that we typed previously. And we're gonna want to get the index path. So we're gonna say let position, let's call it index path. That's probably a better name. Index path is message collection view dot index path, dot index path for a given cell. Pass in that cell, and I think this might return optional, so let's see that again. Index path for the cell. So we are actually going to do a guardlet here to make sure this index path is not nil. Otherwise, we will return out of here. This error should go away now because we have unwrapped our section. Go ahead and hit Command B. And it looks like it's still complaining. Let's see, message collection view, index path for cell. Let's see what we've got going on. So let constant appears to be nested inside another var. Do I have a typo here? We do, okay. Let's get rid of that secondary duplicate let and hit Command R. And now when we tap on the given cell, we should get the index path and be able to tap into our photo. So let's tap this. And again, nothing happens. Awesome. So let's debug this a little bit more. So we tap this, and either we're coming into here or into here. So let me tap on this and see what happens. So I don't even know which one we're running actually. So let me close this. And let's do that one more time. I think it's this one, right? So we tap on this and we tap on this message here. And it might be the case that we're returning in this guard because we can't get the index path. So let's figure that out. Hit this, and then we are going to, see, we tap on this, nothing happens. Oh, it does happen. Okay, interesting. So when we tap on a normal message, we shouldn't actually push anything because it's not a photo message. But if we tap this photo message, looks like we have to tap it at a very particular position. Okay, so we tapped it here on this text-based message, and we were able to come in here, but it doesn't appear to be working for our photo-based messages, which is kind of strange. Whoops, let's get rid of just that line break. Let's get rid of this antivirus pop-up, hit Command R one more time, and let's see why we can't do it on the image message. If this gets too long, maybe I'll roll this over to our next video. But tapping on this, we should be able to get it. But maybe there's another function in here that lets us tap on a media item. So let's see, did tap message, did tap avatar, did tap cell top label, bottom label, message top, message bottom, accessory, image. Okay, even better. So it looks like this entire framework is 10 steps ahead of me. So we can actually take this whole shebang right here, and we want did tap image and paste that code back in here. And it looks like now it'll actually already know we're tapping on an image, so we might be able to simplify this code, but this should work now, fingers crossed. 25th time the charm. So we're gonna open up the conversation and we should be able to tap into this, and boom, we have our image viewer. It's a full screen image viewer. We still have our tab bar down here in the title of photo, but looking pretty slick. So we can now send and render our messages, photo messages in particular. And you'll see that in the conversation list now, we have a URL showing because that's what we put into the database. So we can adjust this later on after we're done with the various chat things. It's pretty easy to fix that. So that's where I will wrap up this video. If you've stayed this long, congrats to you. It's been a long way to get here. So in the next video, we're going to continue to clean some things up and focus on video messages. That said, hit that like button down below if you haven't done so already. Comment if you have any errors or questions or feedback. Always love hearing from you guys. Subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you in the next part.